Welcome, everyone. I am at Prouty Central. This is the Net Control Center for the Prouty. It is in Lebanon, New Hampshire. We'll talk about what the Prouty is, who it is, where, all that. Next slide. Who? The volunteers. The what is the Prouty? When is it? And where is it held? Next slide. The who. It's basically a ton of volunteers. In the ham radio space, it's 30 to 60 of us. We cover the areas of SAGs, which are stop and go sites, Richmond Middle School, RMS, which is where net control is, where the food is, most of the parking for the staff. And of course, volunteers have to deal with housing because you have to house all these riders. There are 5 groups. The one we're going to talk about today are the bicyclists. And ham radio operators are everywhere. We'll talk about that shortly. Next slide. Okay. I'm going to paraphrase this. The general definition of the Prouty is it's an event that raises funds for care and awareness of the life-saving research surrounding cancer. Prouty was the last name of a woman who had the cancer, and a few nurses did a ride in the beginning to raise awareness, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. This happened in the 80s. Next slide, please. Okay, it's usually done in July. This year it's the 14th and 15th, so today and tomorrow. We get here pretty early. I got here at 5 o'clock this morning, getting my equipment checked out, make sure APRS, which we use heavily for resource management. We'll talk about that a little bit. Getting the signs, for deployment in the field, like assigned breaks, or it's missing, or we have the wrong one in place. We have extra signs in most of the vehicles that are supporting the Prouty. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm at Richmond Middle School in Lebanon, New Hampshire. We have a map in a moment that we'll show you, but generally it borders the New Hampshire and Vermont borders. Usually 10, 25A, and 25 on the New Hampshire side, and routes 5 and 8 on Vermont. There's a lot of side areas too. They're much smaller. There's some interconnects and some bridges, some extremely beautiful scenery. Because of the devastating rains this year, and actually we had some pretty bad ones last night, the Vermont component was eliminated. And typically that would include Thetford, Fairleigh, and Bradford. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the finish line for the Prouty riders. I took this picture this afternoon because this balloon was actually set up. So today was the first component. This is the ultimate, and it's typically 100 miles today for the ultimate, and part 2 is 100 miles as well, and that would be tomorrow. Today they restricted it to 77 miles, although a fair number of riders decided they were going to turn it into 100. So things got a little delayed, but that's all right. These guys flew. Next slide, please. This is the bike storage when people come back from the Prouty, and they can get awards, or they can get just talk to people, get food, drinks, just kind of chill out. There's a band too, and quite an elaborate setup. Next slide, please. So this is what the Prouty looks like before there's actually any content to it. This is the site. You've got an incredible space that encompasses these massive tents that handle shaded areas for people to sit down and eat. There's a store outside. There's all kinds of games, and, for kids and whatever. But it's quite an ordeal. This thing is massive. Next slide, please. This just is another view of the same piece. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the interior of the gymnasium where all the equipment is set up initially for deployment. It includes the signage that we use, some of the food, some of the snacks, water, things like that. It also includes medical supplies as well as materials that the bike mechanics that are either roving or are staged at different SAGs. So there's an incredible amount of material that goes out in these vehicles. And some of that stuff you see there are some of the shirts that the volunteer staff will be wearing. Next slide, please. Okay, this is typically the 100-mile. And I don't know if we can, I guess you can't see my mouse, but Richmond Middle School is at the bottom left. And this is basically on the border of New Hampshire on the left side and Vermont on the west side. Today, there was only the 100-mile, actually 77. Tomorrow, there will be multiple races, a 20, 50, a 70 something, and a 100. I actually think they're actually doing the full 100 tomorrow. But this is the general overall map of what's going on. This can take 4, 5, 6 hours or more, depending on weather. And of course, the road conditions. We were actually pretty amazed at just how clean some of these roads were. Of course, last night, we had some torrential rains and any junk that was on the road probably was washed off. Some areas were washed away. We'll get into that maybe. Next slide, please. Okay, ham radio volunteers. Every SAG, the stop and go, has at least one ham there. Often you'll find multiple hams. These people are responsible for all the communication between the various SAGs, the various roving vehicles, as well as net control. So you've got the vehicles, and in my case, you could be either a safety or troubleshooting, a medical group, bike repair, course management, the rovers, sweep vehicles, typically the ones at the very end, ride recovery, person gets lost, stranded, bike is damaged, that would be ride recovery, resupply. So there are at each one of these SAGs, there are tents that contain water and snacks, and also the facilities, as you will. NCS requires a fairly large staff of hams. There's probably about 6 in here at any one point in time. Everything is logged. In this case, I think most of it was done by paper, and I have some of it in front of me. We have this massive map that's in real time. I'd love to be able to show it to you, and maybe we'll be able to have the link up long enough to do that. We also have a weather map, a real-time weather map. It's currently set up to display lightning, thunder and lightning storms, so that they have a sense of what's coming and when, and maybe what to do about it, how much time they might have. Next slide, please. Okay, net control, like any place else in net operations, the brains. We, as I said earlier, we have APRS. We make heavy use of it. It tracks all of our assets. Those are all those vehicles that roam, as well as the supply vehicles. It gives us their location, the general direction that they're heading, and new real-time status, because you can actually send the information. Not many of us do it. Some of us, if we have time, we might. As far as direction, it gives you a general direction because we don't want to overwhelm the system. So we typically report from every APRS unit position information roughly every 2 minutes. And mine is specifically is 2 minutes. Okay, the application we use is APRS-IS 32, the 32-bit version of it. Any of you can bring this application up. It's for free download. You can actually see things. You could put my call sign in if you wanted, NA1T. Take a peek to see where I was today. They actually carry that information from for a year. This is tied into APRS.FI. Next slide, please. Okay. Course of Salute, multiple stop and goes. Today, I believe there were 8. Tomorrow, there will be at least 10. All right. So they stop, they eat, they hydrate, rest, use the facilities, talk about things. They may have discussions about what they encountered, and what may be coming up. Also, we have an opportunity to talk to them to see how they're doing. Messages can be sent because certain areas of the course have horrible cell coverage. While they are doing better, we run with power that is several orders of magnitude, and we can move information if we need to. Each SAG has an EMT and quite a bit of staff. You can't imagine the number of people that come and go in these sites. Next page, please. Okay. Ham rolls. Support the vehicles. Handhelds don't cut it. So you're looking at 50-watt mobile units. This is not something you're going to be carrying around. We do use handhelds to talk within a site. Like if you got 2 hams and they need to keep in contact, they'll take a simplex frequency off to the side and use that. We are the eyes and the ears of the Prouty. We observe and report what we found in near real time, actually. Sometimes the net is busy, so we have to wait, but we have precedence messages. So if you've got an emergency, obviously that takes the priority of everything else. Most of the messages are status or welfare messages. So it's not a super high priority, but it's, get the message out when you can. In the case of the safety vehicles and the sweep vehicles and some of the other vehicles like the bike repair, they are directed as to where to go. You might have a bike down and we get a coordinate position and off we go. And as always, hams are ambassadors for communications. We have tremendous rapport with the riders. Yesterday when I came in, actually last night when I came in, people were thanking me and I hadn't done anything. I started to put my stuff together early this morning. They're thanking me. Thank you for being here. And this afternoon, when I finished my set of tasks, they were thanking me for being there for them. It's quite something. It's extremely rewarding. Next slide, please. Okay, so NCS really is the nerve center. Command and control are here. Prouty Operations is the entity within the Prouty that runs the entire event. We communicate what Prouty Operations wants to the hams in the field. And
time is 8 p.m. 72 degrees, wind calm.
Okay, so that is one of the many repeaters that we use to manage this mess because it's huge. You can imagine what it takes to cover a 100-mile area. Let's see, where were we? Command and control. That's right. Okay. So multiple radios and operators are used. I mean, they're everywhere. You've got some that are static. Those would be the SAGs. And then you've got those who roam or rovers. You got the sweep vehicles. You've got a number of different entities that are on the move constantly, and they're all tracked by APRS. We have a massive display here. It's probably 30 by 60 inches. We have it in the vertical space to keep track of everything. You'll see a slide of that, and if I can manage it, I will attempt to show you in real time what it looks like. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is pretty neat. Rovers travel between two SAGs. They're designated as rover XY, and it means that they're going between SAG X and SAG Y, or rover 3-4, for example, would go transition between SAG 3 and SAG 4. Because of the way they're identified, we know who it is, we know where they are in a general direction. As a SAG closes down, they may retask one of these rovers. Say if it was rover 3-4, they may push that rover to become rover 4-5, or they could move them anywhere on the course based on what is required. Next slide, please. Okay, so typically there are two safety vehicles, and I was one of those today, and two troubleshooting vehicles. Safety looks at the course, makes sure things are okay. The troubleshooting vehicles troubleshoot all of our hardware, mostly APRS, but any communications issue. They're typically safety 1 and safety 2. I was safety 1 today. And trouble 1 and trouble 2. Now, I have these nicknames for the guys that do trouble 1 and trouble 2. I call them trouble and more trouble. I don't typically use that over the air, but I do call it to their face because these guys are something else, and we'll actually get into some of that maybe if we have time. Next slide, please. Okay, that is a picture of this 30 by 60 inch television that shows the overall route. And I don't know if we can zoom in on it, probably not. But what it does is they have assigned locations to the or tags to these various locations. They may have like SAG 1, SAG 2, SAG 3. What they don't show on that screen is we have also put in where the location of the various repeaters are so that we have some kind of an idea of what their footprint might be. But it's huge. If you look off to the left, that list, those are all the in real time, those are all the call signs that are available in that space. We're only showing the call signs that we have aliased. So in mine, it was even though I was a safety, it was actually known as course. It's one of the course ones because I had the person who's actually in charge of the course with me. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our weather map, this real time. This was looking for thunder and lightning storms so that we had a sense of how bad things were going to be. This picture is fairly old, but yeah, we were seeing some pretty nasty weather. Next slide, please. That's on a big screen. Okay, this is Steve's. All right, lost. Who, me? Who's on first? Okay, so my very first Prouty. It was my first introduction to APRS. I didn't have the APRS hardware. They supplied it. And I'm zipping along and I'm like, where am I? I have no idea where I am because I didn't have any feedback. All I had was a report. The devices I use today give me feedback. And here I am trying to figure out, where am I? Am I even going in the right direction? So I called in and I made the statement that I'm not too sure where I am. Am I in the right place? Am I going in the right direction? Of course, you hear all this laughter in the background because they knew. Steve's a newbie, and this was quite a number of years ago. But yeah, and after they stopped laughing, then they were saying, Steve, you're fine. You're exactly where you need to be, and you are continuing to go in the right direction. So that worked out pretty well. Okay, so the next one, this is also me. A number of years ago, I'm driving along. I'm going between SAG 4 and SAG 4 and SAG 5. I was driving one of the supply vehicles. So, I mean, food, water, medical kits, maintenance kits for the bikes, a number of other things, racks, all kinds of odds and ends. And I'm driving along and all of a sudden I'm in a parade. It's like, well, wait a minute. Nobody told me anything about a parade. What's this all about? And nobody knew about it. That's why they didn't tell me about it. the organizers of the parade decided, hey, we've got an audience. It's a built-in audience because the Prouty is here. Let's have a parade. They've had one ever since. I got stuck. For about 25 minutes, I got stuck. A couple of years later, under the roadkill category, here I am, same parade, by the way, and it was just about to start, and they were going to let me sneak through. As I'm sneaking through, I find a woodchuck on the road. He was definitely dead. He'd been there a little while, so I called it in because that's a hazard to bicyclists. So one of the guys, actually Trouble 2, aka More Trouble, said, where is it? I'll come get it. So, all right, whatever. The reason he wanted to come get it was he was deciding to have it for dinner that night. And unfortunately for him, the fire department got to it first and they had it for dinner that night. Next slide, please. So if you have questions, let's have them.
Does anyone have any questions for Steve? Anybody online with questions for Steve? Did we have a question? Did you try the woodchuck?
No, I didn't go near the woodchuck. I'm in my vehicle. It's like dead woodchuck in the middle of the road. I'm like, no, I'm not going near this thing. But Alan wanted it really bad, really bad. And when he got there, he said, Steve, where's my woodchuck? Well, what do you mean your woodchuck? Turned out the fire department had picked it up. They were there because they were part of the parade. You know, this event generates millions and millions of dollars. They spend millions of dollars in the setup. They generate millions of dollars of setup for the event to help people who really, really need it. It's quite an amazing event. And, you know, if you want to look up the Prouty, please do so. You might actually be interested in trying out. There are so many things you can do. You don't have to be a ham. It's easier for us because we always need hams to help us out. But it's an incredible and worthwhile program. And the reason I do it is because my father died of cancer. So, and I do some other events because my mother died of COPD related issues. And that's the whole reason I got into Aries in the first place, was to help others.
Hey, Steve, it's Dennis.
Hi, Dennis.
So, given the weather, was there a drop in the participants this year?
I don't think so. There were 100 for the ultimate, which is today, and then tomorrow. That is the second part. And there was a full 100. I don't know what normally happens for the ultimate. The other one is hundreds of people. And that will be tomorrow. There'll probably be 4 or 5 different races. I mean, I was just looking at the paperwork. There's 26 pages of paperwork describing this event over the 2 days. And there are 7 pages of updates because of the weather and what it did to the roads. I mean, if you look at Vermont, if any of you've seen the Vermont roads on the news, they are totally devastated. So they, in a very short period of time, they were forced to reroute essentially today and some portion of tomorrow. The weather certainly had a tremendous impact. Last night, here I am unloading my car, and I got caught in an incredible thunderstorm. I got soaked. I must have walked 100 feet. I had a hat. It didn't make any difference. I was soaked. Got my clothes off, took a hot shower, felt great, and then just kind of chilled out for a few hours and then passed out. The weather has been an incredible problem for them, but they have risen to the challenge.
So I have a question for you, Steve, and you may not know this answer, but you might know anecdotally. So I'm assuming an event like this certainly has a bunch of hams from both New Hampshire and Vermont. Do you happen to know like any hams that are volunteering that are like from, relatively outside the area?
All over. It's not limited to local. I would say New England. We've had others that either lived here in the past and came back once a year to maybe vacation and participate in this. I mean, I'm here Thursday night, all day Friday, all day Sunday. No, excuse me, all day Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday. I will be going home tomorrow night. I'm not staying over. We have a tradition. Some of us, we would go to margaritas every night, but they've closed due to COVID. So now we found something else called Snacks, SNAX. It's in the same building. It's a little bit different fanfare. And you see an awful lot of people. I mean, you're wearing these shirts that say the Prouty anyway, so people know. It's just incredible. I mean, you can't imagine how big this event is. It's not as big as Boston Marathon, but it's huge.
And how many years have you personally done Prouty?
We were trying to figure that out earlier. It's like 11 or 12.
Oh, wow. So quite some
I
time.
only missed 1 year, and that was the year of COVID where they canceled it. A couple of years ago, they had a shortened version. We couldn't use the middle school. They wouldn't allow us into it. So we brought one of the contrailers from Twin State or Twin Mountain or whatever, Dave Coulter's organization. And we ran it in one of the parking lots. It was an abbreviated version of it, and we just did it. There's a couple of us who do that kind of thing. So,
Steve, do they put you up? Do they put you up? For
yeah,
the
well,
time
you have
you're
the
there,
option
or-
of, you have the option of traveling in or being put up at Dartmouth College, and I'm in a room. We can talk about that. That was kind of amusing last night and this morning. Or you can take a hotel. You're on your own for. The college, I mean, it's 1 or 2 or 3 bedrooms, 3 beds in a room or 2 rooms. Typically, depending upon the age of the dorm, you might have a shower, a bathroom in your suite, or you might have to go down the hall and use something, a common shower. I got here about 5 o'clock last night, and they assigned me a room. Here I am going up to the room. It's ridiculously hot. I mean, it was horrible last night. This is before the rain. They put me on the 4th floor, and I walk up to the 4th floor. I was dying before the 4th floor, but I get to the top of the stairs, and there's an asbestos remediation that they're doing next to the room I was going to be in. I'm like, oh, this doesn't look too good. I hopped into that room just to check it out. I couldn't open the windows, and it was like an oven. So I got in touch with the people who control that, and they got me a different room, and it was down 1 floor. So it was a little bit cooler, but they were doing remediation on that floor as well. And it was a line from the 4th floor, the 3rd floor, the 2nd floor, down to the 1st floor, all in one line. They were doing this remediation. So you couldn't escape it, but it was sealed off. And fortunately, those windows opened, and after the storm, everything cooled off, and Steve fell asleep. But yeah, typically it's very well done. It's bedding, towels, whatever you need there. They fed us breakfast this morning, real breakfast. It was pretty nice. So there's one of the halls that had a massive cafeteria. Walked into it, could have whatever. It was wonderful.
Excellent. Very good. Does anyone else have any questions for Steve? Anybody online? I know I've been scanning the room. I don't have let me look over here. I don't think I'm seeing anybody online there. I think that might do it for questions, Steve.
All right. What we have here is there are several radios here because they run multiple repeaters. They do simplex. They link. There's a repeater network. Actually, there's several repeater networks here. So they do links. They do cross links. They move things on the fly because they send tones over there to switch the links as necessary. We have eye gates for the APRS hardware, and there's quite a bit here. Right now, I'm looking at there are 3 laptops running the show, and plus mine. 2 of the radios that are here, one's a Yaesu 991. They use it, believe it or not, they use it because they like the microphone. It's the desk mic, it's the MD100. And the other radio they use is the Kenwood TMB 71A.
Certainly a lot of those around. And for those watching, there's some bandwidth issues, which is why Steve doesn't have the video going right now.
I'm gonna try something. Let's switch to mine. We can switch to my video. I'm gonna turn on the camera very quickly, just to give you a real-time snapshot of two things. Here we go. So this is the display. On the side, you'll see the call signs that it sees, and you'll see the map. This one's got, if you can see it, Prouty Ops. That's one of the repeaters. There's another one. These are the various SAGs. These have water, another set of repeaters, right? It's the entire course. This is tomorrow's layout. This is the consoles. And let me turn that on. Put someone to sleep. Come on, you can do it. There it goes. So that's the weather map in real time. So again, there's like 6 people here watching all of this. This is in the library, so usually it's pretty quiet and air conditioned. Right now, the air conditioning is turned off. I think that's because Steve's in here, but whatever. Anyway, so there it is. This thing's massive.
Yeah, it looks it. Yeah, the video is actually working well this time, so that's good.
Is there a website that has all this Prouty information, equipment
Prouty.
required?
Look,
The Prouty?
just look up the Prouty. It'll actually be Dartmouth Hitchcock, or Dartmouth actually. Yeah, just look up the Prouty, Prouty.
Okay.
I got it up right now, Steve.
There it is. All right. Sometimes you actually see pictures of us. It's quite an event. It's an extremely rewarding event to participate in at any level. I mean, hell, you can serve food and be happy, or you can help people set up or whatever. I mean, look at this. There's quite a bit of things going on. Oh, look at, yeah, there you go. So these guys got the wimp out at 6 a.m. We were out at 5. Oh, yes, there are multiple events going on. There's the one I'm dealing with is are the bicyclists, but there's golf, there's swimming, there's some kind of a rowing thing, and there's some kind of a virtual thing going on.
Awesome, that's very good. Well, I want to thank you because the hobby certainly has a bunch of public service aspects, and some of us have done some public service and others might not. So it's kind of neat to be able to sort of get a sense as to what's involved in some of the volunteering when it comes to amateur radio and public service. And like you say, it's certainly needed as well. I've done, I think, about 5 Boston marathons years ago.
Right.
Haven't done anything in a while, unfortunately. But the thing is, yeah, these types of events certainly need ham operators. Are certainly appreciated and certainly do a good and important work. So I want to thank you, Steve, and Steve WA1UIF for driving the show here. And stay safe out there and stay dry.
Yeah, I hope.
And stay cool.
Yeah, I'm going to try.
Excellent, very good, Steve. So with that, I'm actually going to conclude the meeting for this evening. I do want to remind people that I am always looking for people to do presentations, and we do have hams of all different levels. By the way, don't always think that your talk has to be on some mathematical antenna talk. I mean, there's a lot of practical talks that we can have for newer hams as well. So, if you have a topic that you want to present, or even if you have a topic that you would like to see presented, go ahead, Steve.
Okay, Steve WA1UIF. What I might want to suggest is that I know there's a lot of guys in here who have been hams for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, how many? Tom? 66. Okay. I'll bet you these hams have pictures from when they first started in ham radio. It'd be awesome to have a meeting where you show a picture of when you first started in ham radio and then kind of gave a little description of how you got into ham radio. And if we had maybe 5 or 6 people do that, to me, that would be really interesting.
I
Just a
certainly like that
suggestion.
idea. No,
Yeah.
I like that idea. So, yeah, so, for some of those folks that have been licensed a while, think about maybe, some old pictures and, stories that you might have from some of your older glory days of amateur radio. That'd be, I agree. That'd be a neat topic. But with that, any topic's always welcome. And, although that would certainly be a neat one. And, I'll see everyone again, next month. And thank you everyone for, coming this month. And, 7-3.